Listen, if a woman does this one thing when she's around you, she's practically begging you to make a move. But here's the problem. 90% of men completely miss it. They overthink it. They second-guess themselves. Or worse, they misread friendly behavior as attraction and make things awkward. I'm going to show you 7 female body language signs that scream, "I want you." Signs backed by evolutionary psychology and neuroscience. And more importantly, I'm going to teach you the Stoic mindset that helps you read these signals correctly without becoming desperate or needy. By the end of this video, you'll have a competitive advantage that most men will never understand. So let's get into it. Before we dive into the 7 signs, we need to understand why men get this wrong in the first place. And it comes down to 3 fundamental mistakes. First, men project their own attraction signals onto women. When a guy is attracted, he stares, he pursues, he makes it obvious. But women? They communicate attraction in much more subtle, indirect ways. It's evolutionary biology. For thousands of years, women had to signal interest while maintaining plausible deniability for social safety reasons. Second mistake, men confuse politeness with attraction. She smiled at you? That might just mean she's a friendly person. She laughed at your joke? Maybe you're actually funny, or maybe she laughs at everyone's jokes. This is where most guys crash and burn. They see basic social courtesy and think she's into me, when really, she's just being nice. And the third mistake, and this is the big one, men wait for 100% certainty before they act. They want her to literally say, "I'm attracted to you. Please ask me out," before they make a move. But attraction doesn't work that way. Women drop hints. They create opportunities. They test you to see if you'll pick up on the signals. The Stoics understood this principle 2,000 years ago. They taught that wisdom comes from observing patterns, not waiting for absolute proof. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the uncertainty you feel, that's actually the signal to move forward, not to hesitate. So with that foundation, let me show you the 7 signs that indicate genuine attraction. And here's what makes these different from other videos on this topic. These aren't just my opinions. Each of these signs is backed by peer-reviewed research in evolutionary psychology, and I'm going to explain not just what to look for, but why it works and what your Stoic response should be. Sign number 1 is what I call the triple glance pattern. Here's how it works. You're in a social setting. Could be a bar, could be a coffee shop, could be a party. You notice a woman looking in your direction. Eye contact happens, and then she looks away. Now, most guys, if they notice this at all, they think, "Okay, she glanced at me, whatever." But here's what separates the signal from random chance. Within the next 30 seconds to 1 minute, she looks back at you. Not once, but twice more. That's the pattern. Look away, look back again. This is called the triangulation gaze in behavioral psychology research. Why does this happen? It's not conscious. Women aren't sitting there thinking, "I'm going to look at him 3 times to signal interest." It's hardwired into evolutionary biology. When humans are attracted to something, our attention keeps returning to it. It's the same reason you keep checking your phone when you're waiting for an important message, or why you keep glancing at dessert on the menu even though you're trying to eat healthy. Your brain is drawn to what it finds valuable or desirable. Dr. Monica Moore at Webster University studied this exact behavior in her famous research on female courtship signaling. She observed over 200 women in singles bars and documented 52 different courtship signals. And you know what was the most common and most reliable? The repeated glance. In her research, when a woman performed the triple glance pattern followed by a smile, men approached 78% of the time. When she didn't, only 13%. That's a 6 times difference. Now here's the Stoic response to this sign, and this is critical. When you notice the triple glance pattern, your job is not to immediately rush over like a desperate puppy. The Stoic principle here is observe without reaction. Acknowledge it internally. Okay, she's shown interest, but maintain your composure. Maybe you hold eye contact for 1 second longer the third time. Maybe you give a subtle nod or a slight smile. But you don't interrupt what you're doing to chase validation. Epictetus taught that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The same applies to attraction. Confidence comes not from receiving attention, but from being undesperate for it. When you notice the triple glance and don't immediately react, you actually increase attraction because you're demonstrating that you're not starved for female attention. You're outcome independent, which is one of the most attractive qualities a man can display. Sign number 2 is unconscious mirroring, and this is one of the most scientifically validated attraction signals we have. Here's what it looks like in real life. You're talking to a woman, maybe you're on a date, maybe you're just having a conversation at work or at a social event. You lean back in your chair, and within a few seconds, she leans back too. You pick up your drink, she picks up hers right after. You cross your legs, she mirrors the position. You touch your face, she touches hers. This isn't coincidence. This is your brain and her brain synchronizing. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brain, discovered by Italian neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti in the 1990s. Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. It's the neurological basis for empathy, for learning, and for social bonding. When someone mirrors your behavior, their mirror neurons are literally creating a simulation of your movements in their own brain. And here's the key. We only do this with people we feel comfortable with, people we're trying to build rapport with, people we're attracted to. There's a famous study by Tanya Chartrand and John Barg at NYU called the chameleon effect that proved this experimentally. They had participants interact with Confederates who either mirrored their behavior or didn't. The participants rated the mirroring Confederates as significantly more likable and reported feeling the interaction went more smoothly. But here's the crucial part. When the participants were asked if they noticed the mirroring, 95% said no. It's unconscious. She's not deciding to mirror you. Her brain is doing it automatically because she's engaged and attracted. Now, how do you test this to distinguish real mirroring from coincidence? Here's the technique. Deliberately change your body position or gesture and watch what she does over the next 10 to 30 seconds. If she mirrors the change, that's one data point. Do it 2 or 3 more times with different movements. If she consistently mirrors you, that's a pattern, not a coincidence. I did this on a date once. I was about 70% sure the woman was into me, but I wanted confirmation. I touched my hair. She touched hers within 15 seconds. I shifted my weight. She shifted hers. I picked up my fork even though I wasn't about to take a bite, and she did the exact same thing. That's when I knew. This isn't just polite conversation. There's genuine attraction here. The Stoic wisdom here comes from Marcus Aurelius again. He wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change." The Stoic doesn't see the world as static. He sees patterns unfolding. When you notice mirroring behavior, you're not seeing one isolated incident. You're seeing a pattern that reveals underlying attraction. And here's your Stoic response. Match her energy, but don't overescalate. If she's mirroring you, that means she's comfortable and engaged. Your job is to maintain that state, not to suddenly become aggressive or outcome-focused. Stay present, stay observant, and let the connection deepen naturally. The Stoics called this a more fatty love of fate. You're not forcing an outcome, you're cooperating with what's already unfolding. Sign number 3 is the hair touch combined with neck exposure, and this is one of the most misunderstood signals in attraction. Let me break down what this actually looks like and why it matters. You're talking to a woman and you notice her hand goes up to her hair. She might twirl a strand around her finger, she might push it behind her ear, she might run her fingers through it or adjust her ponytail. And as she does this, She tilts her head slightly, exposing the side of her neck. This happens multiple times during your conversation. Most men, if they notice this at all, think, "Oh, her hair was bothering her," or "she's just fidgeting." Wrong. This is called preening behavior, and it's one of the most primitive attraction signals in the human behavioral repertoire. Let me explain the biology here because this is really interesting. The neck is one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body. Your carotid arteries, your jugular veins, your trachea, all your vital structures are right there under thin skin with no bone protection. In evolutionary terms, exposing your neck to another person is a massive trust signal. Predators go for the neck. In combat, the neck is a kill zone. When an animal shows its belly or exposes its throat, it's a submission and trust display. When a woman exposes her neck while talking to you, her limbic system, the primitive part of her brain, is saying, "I trust this person, I feel safe, I'm not in threat mode." The hair-touching component adds another layer. Grooming behavior in primates, which humans are, is directly linked to bonding and sexual interest. When a female primate is interested in a male, she engages in what's called self-directed grooming. She fixes her appearance, preens her fur or feathers, makes herself more visually appealing. Human women do the exact same thing. That's why women touch up their makeup, adjust their clothing, and play with their hair when they're around someone they're attracted to. It's not conscious vanity, it's biology. There's research by Dr. David Givens, an anthropologist who studies courtship behavior, that documents this extensively. In his observations of singles bars and social venues, he found that hair touching and neck exposure were among the top 5 most common female courtship signals, appearing in approximately 60% of successful courtship interactions. He specifically notes that these signals appear more frequently as attraction intensifies, meaning the more into you she is, the more often you'll see this behavior. Here's how you distinguish this from random fidgeting. Real attraction-based preening has a specific quality to it. First, it's repetitive. She does it multiple times during your interaction, not just once. Second, it's smooth and prolonged. She's not just quickly brushing hair out of her face. She's running her fingers through it in a slower, more deliberate motion. Third, and this is key, it happens in response to things you say or do. You give her a compliment, she touches her hair. You make her laugh, she pushes hair behind her ear and tilts her head. You hold eye contact, she does the hair flip. That's the pattern to look for. The Stoic response here is crucial, and this is where most men blow it. When you see this signal, do not comment on it. Do not say, "I noticed you're playing with your hair," or "Are you nervous?" That's try-hard behavior that reveals you're analyzing her instead of being present. The Stoic principle is control what you can control, accept what you can't. You can't control whether she's attracted to you. That's already determined. But you can control your response. Notice the signal, let it inform your calibration, but stay centered in your own frame. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence upon the future." When she shows this sign, enjoy the present moment of mutual attraction. Don't project into future outcomes. Don't start planning your relationship in your head. Just be present and continue being the version of yourself that created this attraction in the first place. Sign number 4 is what I call the touch excuse. And this is the sign where things shift from "maybe she's interested" to "yeah, she's definitely interested." Here's how it manifests. You're talking to a woman and she finds a reason, any reason, to make physical contact with you. She touches your arm while making a point. She playfully hits your shoulder when you make a joke. She says, "Let me see your watch," and grabs your wrist. She adjusts your collar or brushes lint off your shirt. She grabs your hand to compare hand sizes. The specific excuse doesn't matter. What matters is that she's creating physical contact where it wouldn't naturally occur. Why is touch such a powerful indicator? Because human beings are extremely protective of their personal space. especially with people they don't know well. We have these invisible boundaries called proximity zones that were mapped out by anthropologist Edward T. Hall in the 1960s. There's the public zone, about 12 feet or more. That's for strangers. There's the social zone, 4 to 12 feet. That's for acquaintances and casual interactions. There's the personal zone, 1.5 to 4 feet. That's for friends. And then there's the intimate zone, 0 to 18 inches. That's for romantic partners, close family, and people we're attracted to. When a woman voluntarily enters your intimate zone and initiates touch, she's breaking through a massive psychological barrier. There's also a neurochemical component here. Touch releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. It's the same chemical that bonds mothers to babies, that creates trust between people, that facilitates pair bonding in romantic relationships. When she touches you, her brain is releasing oxytocin, which makes her feel more connected to you. And here's the beautiful part. Oxytocin is self-reinforcing. The more she touches you, the more bonded she feels, which makes her want to touch you more. This is why physical escalation is so important in dating. You're not just being forward, you're literally creating chemical bonding. I know this sign works because I've seen it play out countless times. In fact, I created a short video about this exact signal. She touches your arm while talking, and it got over 1,200 views because men instinctively recognize how important this is. They want to know, does this mean what I think it means? And the answer is yes, it does. Research by psychologist April Krusko found that even brief, incidental touch significantly increased compliance and positive feelings. In one famous study, waitresses who lightly touched customers on the arm received significantly higher tips than those who didn't. That's the power of touch. It creates instant connection and positive association. Now here's how you calibrate this correctly. Not all touch is created equal. There's friendly touch, which is brief and occurs in non-intimate areas, like a pat on the shoulder or a handshake. And then there's attraction touch, which lasts longer and occurs in more intimate areas. So if she touches your forearm and lets her hand linger for 2 or 3 seconds while maintaining eye contact, that's attraction. If she touches your chest, your back, your leg, that's attraction. If she finds multiple excuses to touch you throughout a conversation, that's definitely attraction. But if it's just a quick tap on the shoulder when she says goodbye, that might just be friendly. The Stoic response to touch is about matching energy without being needy. When she touches your arm, you don't recoil and you don't freeze up. You accept it naturally, as if physical contact is a normal part of your life, because it should be. This goes back to the Stoic principle of preferred indifference. The Stoics taught that external things, money, status, physical pleasure, should be preferred but not necessary. Touch from an attractive woman should be welcome, but not something you're desperate for. Then, and this is important, you reciprocate in a proportional way. If she touched your arm for 2 seconds, later in the conversation you might touch her arm or shoulder briefly when making a point. You're matching her level of escalation, not jumping 10 steps ahead. This demonstrates social calibration and confidence, 2 extremely attractive traits. Sign number 5 is the proximity test, and this is where women separate the confident men from the uncertain ones. Here's what this looks like in practice. You're at a social gathering. Maybe you've been talking to this woman for a bit. Maybe you've just met. And you notice something. She keeps finding reasons to be physically near you. You move to a different part of the room, and within a few minutes, she migrates over to that area too. You're standing at the bar, and she comes and stands next to you even though there's plenty of space elsewhere. You sit down, and she chooses the seat closest to you even when other seats are available. This is called proximity-seeking behavior, and it's hardwired into human courtship. The psychology behind this is really straightforward. We move toward what we value and away from what we don't. If you're at a party and someone you find boring or annoying is talking, what do? You find an excuse to leave. You go get a drink, You go to the bathroom. You see a friend across the room you need to talk to. But if you're talking to someone fascinating, someone you're attracted to, you plant yourself there. You don't want to leave. And if circumstances force you to separate, you find your way back as soon as possible. It's the same principle that drives kids to follow their parents around the house, or why your dog follows you from room to room. Proximity equals interest. There's evolutionary biology at play here too. For most of human history, we lived in small tribal groups of 50 to 150 people. Mate selection happened through repeated proximity and interaction over time. Women who were interested in a particular man would spend more time in his vicinity, increasing the chances of interaction and pair bonding. This behavior is so ingrained that it still manifests today, even in modern dating contexts where we have far more mobility and choice. Anthropologist David Givens documented this extensively in his research on courtship in public spaces. He found that when women are attracted to a man, they engage in what he calls space reduction. They systematically decrease the physical distance between themselves and the target. They'll start a conversation from across the room and gradually move closer as the conversation progresses. They'll position themselves in his path or line of sight. They'll occupy spaces where they know he'll be. It's not stalking. It's subtle, socially acceptable proximity seeking. Here's how you can test if this is real attraction or coincidence. Pay attention to the pattern, not individual instances. If she happens to be in the same area as you once, that could be random. But if it happens 3, 4, 5 times over the course of an evening, that's a pattern. Also watch for how she positions herself relative to you versus other people. If she's maintaining distance from everyone else, but consistently staying close to you, that's significant. And notice her body orientation. Is she facing you with her torso and feet, even when she's technically talking to someone else? That's called orienting response, and it indicates where her real attention is. I'll give you a real example. I was at a friend's party once, and I noticed this woman kept ending up near me. We'd have a brief conversation, then she'd go talk to someone else, but within 10 minutes, she'd be back in my vicinity. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, but then I deliberately moved to different areas of the party 3 times, and each time, within 5 to 10 minutes, there she was again. That's when I realized, okay, this isn't random. She's deliberately maintaining proximity. And sure enough, when I finally directly engaged with her and suggested we grab coffee, she immediately said yes. The proximity seeking was her way of signaling interest while maintaining plausible deniability. The Stoic approach to proximity seeking is about creating opportunity while maintaining outcome independence. When you notice she keeps finding her way back to you, that's your green light to engage more directly. But here's the key, you're not desperate about it. The Stoics taught, do your best, then accept the outcome. Your best in this scenario is to recognize the signal and create an opportunity for interaction. But you're not attached to whether she says yes or no, because you know your value doesn't depend on any one woman's response. So when you notice the proximity pattern, you might say something simple like, I've noticed you and I keep ending up in the same place. We should probably actually have a conversation. It's direct without being pushy, it acknowledges the pattern without being weird about it, and it gives her an easy yes. That's Stoic game in action. Sign number 6 is the genuine smile. And this is where most men get fooled because they don't understand the difference between a polite smile and an attraction smile. Let me break this down in detail because understanding this distinction is critical. There are 2 types of smiles in human communication. There's the social smile, also called the Pan-American smile, because it's the smile flight attendants give passengers, polite, professional, emotionally neutral. And then there's the Duchenne smile, named after the French neurologist Guillaume Duchenne, who first studied it in the 1800s. The Duchenne smile is the genuine smile, the one that indicates real positive emotion. Here's how you tell the difference. A social smile only involves the muscles around the mouth, The zygomatic major muscle pulls the corners of the mouth up into a smile shape. But that's it. The eyes stay the same. There's no change in the orbicularis oculi, the muscles that surround the eyes. You can fake a mouth smile very easily. We all do it 100 times a day in polite social interactions. But you cannot voluntarily contract the orbicularis oculi muscles. They only activate during genuine positive emotion. So here's what to look for. When a woman gives you a genuine Duchenne smile, you see 3 things. First, yes, her mouth is smiling. Second, and this is crucial, her eyes crinkle at the corners. You'll see crow's feet wrinkles, even on a young woman with smooth skin. Third, her whole face lights up. There's an animation and energy to it that's not present in a polite smile. She might tilt her head slightly, her pupils may dilate, and the smile lingers a bit longer than a social smile would. That combination, mouth smile plus eye crinkles plus facial animation, that's the genuine attraction smile. Why does this matter so much? Because emotions drive behavior. If a woman is genuinely happy and excited to be talking to you, that positive emotional state creates attraction, and it shows in her smile. Research by psychologist Paul Ekman, who's the world's leading expert on facial expressions, has documented that the Duchenne smile is universally recognized across all cultures as indicating genuine happiness. You can't fake it, which means you can trust it. I've tested this in my own life countless times. I've had women give me polite smiles all day long. Baristas, co-workers, acquaintances. It's pleasant, but it means nothing. But when a woman gives me the full Duchenne smile, with the eye crinkle and the facial animation, especially multiple times during a conversation, that's when I know there's real interest. It's one of the most reliable signals because unlike words, which can lie, genuine facial expressions don't lie. Your face reveals what your brain is actually feeling. Here's how you test this in real time. Pay attention to how she smiles at you versus how she smiles at other people. Does everyone get the same smile? Or is there something different when she smiles at you? Does her smile seem genuine and extended when talking to you, but more brief and perfunctory with others? That contrast is your evidence. Also notice what triggers the smile. If she smiles big when you walk into the room, when you say something funny, when you make eye contact, those are all positive reinforcement signals. Her brain is rewarding her for interacting with you by releasing dopamine, which creates the genuine smile. The Stoic wisdom here is about presence and observation. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But I'd add, we also have 2 eyes. The Stoic man is observant. He reads the room. He notices patterns. He picks up on nonverbal communication that less aware men miss. When you see the genuine smile, you recognize it as a signal, but you don't break frame to acknowledge it. You don't say, "Wow, you're really smiling at me." That's approval-seeking behavior. Instead, you simply continue being the man who elicits that response. You stay in your masculine frame, you maintain your composure, and you let the interaction unfold naturally. The smile tells you you're on the right track, so just keep doing what you're doing. Sign number 7 is when she asks you personal questions, and this is the sign that separates surface-level interaction from genuine interest. Here's what this looks like. You're talking to a woman, and the conversation goes beyond small talk. She's not just asking, "What do you do?" or "Where are you from?" Those are basic social questions anyone would ask. She's asking deeper, more personal questions. Do you live alone or with roommates? What do you do on weekends when you're not working? Are you close with your family? What are you doing this Friday night? Do you date a lot? These questions seem casual, but they're actually information-gathering missions. Why does this happen? Because when a woman is attracted to you, her brain shifts into what's called mate evaluation mode. She's no longer just being friendly. She's actively assessing whether you're a viable romantic option. And to do that, she needs data. She needs to know your living situation, your availability, your social life, your relationship status, your lifestyle compatibility. It's the same thing you'd do if you were seriously considering buying a car. You'd ask detailed questions about mileage, maintenance history, features. She's doing the same thing with you as a potential romantic partner. The personal questions also serve another purpose. They create opportunities. When she asks, "What are you doing this weekend?" she's not just making conversation. She's checking your availability and creating an opening for you to suggest plans together. When she asks if you live alone, she's gathering logistical information that could be relevant for future intimacy. When she asks about your relationship history, she's trying to understand if you're emotionally available and what your patterns are. These questions are strategic, even if she's asking them naturally without a conscious agenda. There's also a psychological principle at play called reciprocal disclosure. In social psychology research, it's well documented that when people are interested in building connection with someone, they engage in progressively deeper levels of self-disclosure. She asks you a personal question, you answer, then you ask her something personal back, she answers, and the intimacy level of the conversation gradually increases. This back and forth creates emotional bonding and moves the relationship from acquaintance to potential romantic interest. Here's how you distinguish interested questions from friendly questions. First, notice the frequency. If she's asking multiple personal questions within one conversation, that's a pattern. Second, notice if she's asking follow-up questions based on your answers. That shows genuine interest versus just asking scripted questions. If you say, "I went hiking last weekend," and she responds with, "Oh, where do you usually hike?" Or, "Do you go alone or with friends?" she's engaged and interested. Third, notice if she's volunteering personal information about herself in return. Reciprocal disclosure is a clear sign of connection and trust. Let me give you a concrete example. I was talking to a woman at a networking event recently, and the conversation shifted from generic work stuff to personal questions. She asked where I lived, then asked if I had roommates or lived alone. Then she asked what I do after work to decompress. Then she asked if I was dating anyone currently. Within 10 minutes, she'd asked 5 or 6 personal questions while volunteering information about herself too. That's not friendly curiosity. That's evaluation and opportunity creation. And sure enough, by the end of the conversation, she suggested we should get coffee and gave me her number without me even having to ask. The Stoic response to personal questions is to be honest and authentic while maintaining mystery. The Stoics valued truth and directness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." So when she asks personal questions, answer truthfully. But here's the calibration. You don't overshare or trauma dump. You give enough information to answer the question and create connection, but you don't go into exhaustive detail. You maintain some mystery and intrigue. If she asks what you do on weekends, you might say, "I've been getting into rock climbing lately. It's a good mental reset from work." What about you? Brief, interesting, authentic, then redirect back to her. This maintains the conversational flow while showing you're comfortable with vulnerability, but not desperate to over-explain yourself. So those are the 7 signs. The triple glance pattern, unconscious mirroring, hair touch with neck exposure, the touch excuse, the proximity test, the genuine smile, and personal questions. Now here's what separates you from 90% of men out there. Most guys, when they see these signs, they either miss them completely or they see them and then become needy and desperate. They suddenly change their whole personality. They start seeking approval. They become outcome dependent. That's the wrong move. Here's the Stoic advantage, and this is what's going to make you truly attractive. When you notice these signs, you observe them, you acknowledge internally that interest exists, but you don't change who you are. You don't suddenly start trying harder. You don't become validation seeking. You maintain your frame, your composure, your outcome independence. Because here's the paradox of attraction. The less you need it, the more you get it. When you can notice signs of interest without becoming desperate for them, you demonstrate the highest form of confidence. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern psychology has validated, that true power comes from internal state, not external validation. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. When you see these 7 signs, you recognize that her attraction is beyond your direct control. You can't force it or manipulate it into existence. But what you can control is your response. You can remain centered, present, and authentically yourself. That's Stoic game. That's masculine confidence that's genuinely attractive. So here's your action step for this week. Practice observation without reaction. Go into social situations and simply notice these 7 signs when they appear. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge her. Don't immediately try to capitalize on every signal. Just observe. Build your awareness of human behavior and attraction dynamics. Because the man who can read the room, who understands nonverbal communication, who knows when interest exists, that man has a massive advantage in dating and in life. And here's the beautiful part. When you see 3 or more of these signs together from the same woman, that's your green light. That's not, maybe she's interested. That's, yes, she's definitely interested, and you have permission to escalate. At that point, your job is simple. Create an opportunity for one-on-one interaction. Ask for her number. Suggest grabbing coffee. Invite her to something you're already doing. Make it low pressure and easy for her to say yes. Because she's already given you the signals. Now you just have to act on them. Remember, attraction is about pattern recognition, not mind reading. You'll never have 100% certainty. But when you see these patterns, that's enough. The Stoics called this reasonable assent. You make decisions based on probable evidence, not absolute proof. These 7 signs are your probable evidence. Trust them, and more importantly, trust yourself. If this video helped you understand female attraction better, hit that subscribe button because I break down psychology, stoicism, and practical masculinity every single week. Drop a comment below and let me know, which of these 7 signs have you noticed most in your own life? And which ones were you missing until now? I read every comment and I'll respond to as many as I can. Until next time, stay stoic, stay observant, and remember, confidence comes from self-mastery, not validation. I'll see you in the next video.